Number 1.
The details surrounding the day of Brenda's disappearance are largely uncertain, given the amount of stories told by those who were with her. The following is what investigators are able to confirm. On the morning of May 7, 1961, Brenda and Vivian walked toward Lake Enid, approximately 5 kilometers from Wilmer, with 3 other youths named Edward Carson, John Carson and Elwood Godline. The group went hiking and had a picnic, and there are reports they even swam in the lake, despite its likely cold temperature. At around 2:30 p.m., Vivian and Edward split from the group, leaving Brenda alone with John and Elwood. Brenda was expected back at her grandmother's house by 3 p.m. that afternoon. When she didn't return, her uncle went out to search for her. During his search, he ran into a group of local boys. Many suspect them to have been Elwood, Edward, and John, who said she'd left the area. Hundreds of searchers searched the area surrounding Lake Enid for 2 weeks, the largest search in the valley's history, but Brenda's body was never located. Farmers, laborers, businessmen and workers from a local sawmill were involved in the approximately 500 large group. They searched the woods, the dredging of Lake Enid and Moon Lake, and the nearby Columbia River with the aid of search helicopters, 70 riders on horses and rescue dogs. The wetlands and their tributaries were searched monthly well into 1962, along with Horsethief Canyon and Toby Creek Canyon. While the remains of a man missing since the 1930s were located, nothing related to Brenda's case was uncovered. The group with Brenda on the day she disappeared gave conflicting accounts about what happened. According to Hilda, one of them admitted to her that he'd seduced Brenda, but no one believed her when she recounted this to the authorities, and he declined to admit to it in later interrogations. According to John and Elwood, Brenda had decided to walk up the hill toward home at around 4:30 p.m. that afternoon. Despite them telling her she was going in the wrong direction, she allegedly yelled at them to shut up and continued hiking up the hill. Her sister, Audrey, has difficulty believing this story. Given Brenda's shyness, she finds it unlikely she would have felt confident telling anyone to shut up, let alone a group of older boys. Vivian was the only one in the group not interviewed. When approached by investigators, she produced a doctor's note declaring she could not be questioned regarding the case. Years later, John admitted to having sex with Brenda twice on the day she went missing, and he claimed to have asked if Elwood could have sex with her too. Brenda refused and ran away, while the 2 boys chased her. She went into the wooded area up Strawberry Draw, just east of Lake Enid, where the pair lost sight of her. John claimed they heard a car engine in the distance. According to John, the intercourse between them had been consensual, despite there being a 5-year age gap between them. Investigators shared they have difficulty believing this. John, Edward, and Elwood were administered polygraph tests 30 years later. All 3 passed, but police say it's hard to determine the accuracy of the results, given the amount of time that's passed since Brenda's disappearance. It was noted Elwood was the only one to show any remorse over the case. According to Elwood's brother, Vivian was also given a polygraph test and passed. Investigators have dealt with numerous sightings in the years since Brenda's disappearance from across Canada. In the 1970s, 3 10-year-old boys came across a set of bones in a wooded area, which resembled the shape of a small and intact human skeleton. The location was approximately 5 kilometers from where Brenda disappeared, and the grave appeared to have been disturbed. At the time, they didn't reveal their discovery out of fear they'd get in trouble for disobeying orders not to leave their grandmother's property that day. It would be decades later, in 2001, that the story would come to the attention of the authorities after rumors of the discovery spread through Invermere and the surrounding area. Given the amount of time that had passed, one of the boys, now a grown man, was only able to provide the general area of the discovery. Police wished to speak with the other 2 in order to help pinpoint the exact location of the remains, and they hope to eventually compare them to Brenda's dental records, which are on file. On the 40th anniversary of her disappearance, a local man who'd been involved in the initial search contacted the family to say he believed they'd been looking in the wrong area. He believed Brenda had never been in the Strawberry Draw. This was corroborated by one of the original trackers, who was in contact with investigators and said there had been no tracks on the draw. This tracker recounted a story from 1961. He'd seen one of the Carson boys with their mother at the staging area at Mun Lake. By 8 a.m., the shaken sawdust pile in Barber's farm was alight with flames. The tracker and his partner went to the pile and noted several shoe and boot prints around the 162 circumference pile, while also spotting another area burning on the hillside, about halfway up. 2 hours later, he'd returned to the pile, but found it too hot to approach. This had never sat well with him, especially given it was located approximately 250 meters from the shack Carson admitted to having had sex with Brenda in. Investigators were intrigued by this new information, finding the tracker to be credible. They hoped to one day do an archaeological dig at the site. On June 15, 2006, a resident found a human skull in the water near the shoreline just north of the Bayshore condominiums in Invermere. No other remains were found when the area was searched by the Columbia Valley Search and Rescue Team. The skull was sent to a forensic anthropologist in Cranbrook, British Columbia for analysis so that its age, race, sex and date of death could be determined. It's currently unknown if the skull washed ashore or was buried and later uncovered when the lake bank eroded, but it's noted the only open missing persons case at the time was Brenda's. 2 areas of interest have been identified as potentially being the resting place of Brenda's remains: the field near Barber's farm and unnamed area that is currently being evaluated. In a letter posted to the Columbia Valley Pioneer on May 6, 2011, a woman named Margaret Porcina claimed Brenda's relatives had contacted her to say Brenda had actually gone hiking at Mun Lake, not Lake Enid, and she was meant to be home by 4 p.m., not 3 p.m. like originally stated. She also referenced an article from the Valley Echo, which stated Vivian had actually been questioned by investigators and had said that Brenda had run off around the time a hailstorm began, around 2 p.m. on the day she went missing. It should be said these are claims that have not been confirmed by investigators. Police believe Brenda met with foul play and is deceased. Her familial DNA and dental records have been added to a national database should her body be found. In 2012, Corporal Brent Ayers took over the investigation. He revealed that most of the statements currently in the case file are from decades after Brenda's disappearance, around the time a renewed focus was placed on the investigation. He's interested in having a university research team utilize modern technology, such as ground-penetrating radar, to review the area near Barber's farm. He also wishes to look at an old well site that was filled in after Brenda's disappearance. His aim is to obtain an aerial map of Lake Enid from around the 1950s-1960s and compare it to more recent ones to see how the area has changed over the years. Theories. 1. Some suspect John Carson and Elwood Godline are responsible for Brenda's disappearance, given they were likely the last ones to see her alive on the day she went missing. Many are suspicious of their changing stories and John's claims about the consensual intercourse. They feel their version of events, wherein Brenda ran away, was created to hide their own involvement. It should be reminded that both Elwood and John passed polygraph tests that were administered to them later in the investigation. However, investigators themselves question the authenticity of the results, given 30 years had passed since Brenda's disappearance. 2. The theory brought up by those with Brenda on the day she went missing was that she was abducted by a passerby in a vehicle. According to John, Brenda had run into the woods, after which the 2 youths heard the sound of a vehicle in the distance. There is not much information available regarding the possibility of a stranger abduction in the case. 3. Some simply believe Brenda got lost in the woods. However, many don't give this much credence, given the extensive search that was conducted in the immediate aftermath of her disappearance. It's believed Brenda would have been found, either alive or deceased, if she had simply gotten lost in the bush. As aforementioned, nothing related to the case was found during the initial 2-week search. The remains later found by the 3 boys, if Brenda's, were found buried in an unmarked grave, meaning if they were hers then she likely met with foul play and was buried by her killer. 4. One theory that was quickly discounted states Brenda was sent to Ontario and returned to the area years later under a new name. There is no evidence to support she left the area, nor that she was in Ontario or other areas of British Columbia, aside from a few unsubstantiated sightings. Brenda's father passed away in 1981 at the age of 59 after suffering 4 heart attacks and undergoing a battle with lung cancer. According to the family, he never got over his daughter's disappearance and often spent his free time searching for her. Hilda passed away in 2016. Albert suffers from anxiety as a result of his sister's disappearance. While he was unsure of what he was dealing with initially, therapy has helped him to understand his feelings and better work through them. Elwood has since passed away. His brother, Russell Godleen, has criticized the scrutiny he was placed under, writing in a letter to the Invermere Valley Echo that Elwood, who was just 13 years old at the time, had been treated unfairly by investigators. He says the RCMP and game wardens had interrogated him without an adult present and that he was, at times, denied water and food and threatened with physical violence. Russell has also claimed that a tracking canine lost Brenda's scent near the location where Elwood and John said they lost sight of her and that Elwood was only left alone after passing a polygraph test. Brenda Byman went missing from Wilmer, British Columbia, Canada on May 7, 1961. She was 12 years old and was last seen wearing a white blouse, a dark blue sweater, a pair of gray and faded blue checkered slacks, a faded royal blue parka with a fur-lined pink hood, a yellow scarf with a flowered 43 border, and size 6 blue and white saddle-type shoes. At the time of her disappearance, she stood at 4'83" and weighed approximately 90 pounds. She had strawberry blonde hair and brown eyes. Currently, the case is classified as a missing persons investigation, with foul play suspected. If alive, she would be 72 years old. Those with information are asked to contact the Columbia Valley Detachment of the RCMP at 250-342-9292. Those wishing to remain anonymous can submit tips via Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477.
Number 2.
On March 3, 2011, Luke left his father's home in North Bay, Ontario. According to Rob, he had to work overtime at a pulp and paper mill in Temiskaming, so Luke was unable to stay with him the following night. After leaving his father's home, Luke stayed with friends in North Bay at an apartment located at 683 Sherbrooke Street in the city's Nipissing district. That evening, he and his friends were drinking when they decided to visit Cecil's Eatery and Beer Society, located in the 100 block of Main Street at the intersection of Wild Street. The group arrived at 11:54 p.m., but Luke was denied entry due to his level of intoxication and left the bar alone. It's reported that a snowstorm was moving through the area at the time. Luke was reported missing to the North Bay Police Service on March 7, 2011. During the initial search, police seized Luke's dark navy American Eagle jacket, his cell phone, his keys and his prescription glasses from the apartment at which he had been staying. The residence would later become the subject of a forensic investigation. According to his phone records, his last communication was a text to his father at 8:51 p.m. on the evening of March 4, 2011, asking for a ride home to Quebec the next day. Surveillance footage from Cecil's confirmed that Luke and his friends arrived at the bar at 11:54 p.m. on the evening he went missing. It showed him leaving the establishment alone and walking onto its patio, where he initially turned left before realizing he needed to go right in order to make it onto Main Street. From there, footage shows him standing outside of Zoom nightclub before heading west on Main Street toward a Bank of Montreal (BMO) location. Cut-off images from the bank show a man believed to be Luke entering, followed by an unidentified male. On March 15, 2011, Luke's bank card was found in a snowbank by a pedestrian in the 500 block of Sherbrooke Street. According to bank records, he last accessed his account on the day he went missing, having withdrawn $20. On March 19, 2011, police searched the eastern part of North Bay's downtown. The team included a psychic and a search dog, which was given a bag of Luke's clothes in the hopes it would pick up his scent. It ran to the apartment before leading investigators to Main Street and back around to Sherbrooke Street, eventually bringing searchers to the Kinsman Trail. It reportedly barked at the banks of Chippewa Creek. The investigation surrounding Luke's disappearance has been subject to much media and community attention. In April 2011, the North Bay Police Service, with the help of the Sûreté du Québec and the Ontario Provincial Police's K9 unit, conducted ground searches in a rural area close to Témiscamingue. 2 months later, on June 16, 2011, the OPS Underwater Search and Rescue Unit had divers search Lake Nipissing near the water treatment plant for clues. This search was based on a tip from the public. In March 2016, a pre-existing $10,000 reward for information was increased to $50,000 with the assistance of the OP and the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services. On June 14, 2016, the North Bay Police Service and the Sûreté du Québec searched a home on Boucher Street in Témiscamingue. Nothing was located, but investigators returned the following day. Investigators held a news conference in October 2019 to announce they'd uncovered a later sighting of Luke at Shooter's Bar at the Voyager Inn on Delaware Street, off Algonquin Avenue. He was seen socializing, and an employee recalled seeing him at around 3 a.m. on the morning of March 5, 2011, before he obtained a ride from at least one of the bar's patrons. Additional witnesses came forward and were interviewed. During the same press conference, it was announced that billboards featuring Luke's image and the number those with information could call had been installed along highways 11, 17, and 63. Over the past 10 years, investigators have conducted hundreds of interviews and followed up on numerous leads. They admit that the beginning of the investigation was fraught with misinformation and rumors, and they continue to have the assistance of the OP. The investigation has led to the identification of a number of persons of interest, and many having been cleared of suspicion. It is believed Luke met with foul play and is now deceased. His DNA and dentals are available for comparison, should his remains be located. Theories: 1. Rob is of the belief Luke was murdered because he owed money to an unknown individual. He believes said person is the unidentified man seen in the surveillance images with Luke at the BMO location. His theory is that the pair went to take out money from Luke's account, but when Luke discovered he didn't have his bank card on him, they went back to the apartment on Sherbrooke Street to retrieve it. When it wasn't there, the male killed him at an unknown location and disposed of his body. 2 women came forward to corroborate Rob's theory, with one stating she'd witnessed Luke being beaten to death and his body disposed of in the Témiscamingue area. However, both women's stories have been proven false, and they were each individually prosecuted for obstruction of justice and sentenced to jail time. 2. A second theory is that Luke accidentally drowned in Lake Nipissing due to his level of intoxication. There are many holes in this theory, however, and investigators don't believe Luke's disappearance is the result of an accident. They state that Shooter's Bar, where he was last seen, is a fair bit away from any bodies of water, and that Lake Nipissing was shallow and still frozen over at the time, meaning it would have been obvious if he'd broken through the ice. His body would have also been found fairly quickly. 3. A final theory held by internet sleuths is that Luke met with foul play while hitchhiking home to Témiscamingue. As aforementioned, he had texted his father earlier in the evening about getting a ride home the following day. However, many question the validity of this, stating Luke wouldn't have left behind his belongings at the Sherbrooke Street apartment if he'd been planning on traveling back to Quebec. Rob has since sold his home in North Bay and moved to Kapawa, Quebec. He now lives a short drive from Luke's old apartment in Témiscamingue. Rob always lights a candle on Luke's birthday, paying homage to a line his son always used to say to him, "Lots of light to you, Dad." Luke's case has been featured on numerous podcasts, including the Shedding Light podcast and the Already Gone podcast. Over the years, the family has held numerous candlelight vigils and done all they can to raise money for the reward, including holding community concerts. Luke Joly-Durocher went missing from North Bay, Ontario, Canada on March 4, 2011. He was 20 years old and was last seen wearing a dark navy American Eagle jacket, a gray t-shirt with a purple logo on the lower left side, dark blue-black jeans, a purple studded belt, and a pair of black New Balance running shoes with green stitching. It's noted his belt and a black laptop shoulder bag he owned have never been recovered. At the time of his disappearance, he had a slim build, standing at 5'83" and weighing 150 pounds. He has short, curly dark brown hair and brown eyes, and often has facial hair. He has a scar on his right forearm, which is thinner than his left, and he has braces on his upper teeth. Currently, the case is classified as a missing persons investigation, with foul play suspected. If alive, he would be 31 years old. Those with information regarding the case are asked to contact the North Bay Police Service tip line at 705-497-5555 or the OP at 1-888-310-1122. Those wishing to remain anonymous can call Near North Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477.
Number 3.
Just before midnight on December 9, 2004, Maggie received a phone call from an unknown person. After finishing the call, she told her roommates she'd be right back, as she had to meet a friend. She took nothing with her. Maggie was reported missing by her roommate, David Stang, on December 18, 2004, after she still hadn't returned home. However, the Edmonton Police Service did not release information about her disappearance until 5 months later. The care unit is currently handling the case. It's a Royal Canadian Mounted Police entity that investigates cases of missing and murdered vulnerable individuals throughout Alberta. In April 2005, they released a public alert that detailed Maggie's involvement in the sex trade industry, saying she lived a high-risk lifestyle. According to David, he was not fully knowledgeable about Maggie's work in the sex trade, only saying he would drive her to and from her meetings with clients. In October 2015, the RCMP featured Maggie's case in a 10-day social media campaign meant to highlight cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women across Canada. In November 2015, Crime Stoppers set up a billboard at the intersection of 117th Avenue and 95th Street in Edmonton, in the hopes of jogging someone's memory and reigniting interest in the case. That same month, they also released a series of video reenactments. Maggie's family issued its first public pleas for assistance in 2015. They don't believe she willingly left her of her own volition, given how close she was to her loved ones. While foul play is suspected in the case, investigators have very little to go on. They say they have their suspicions, but don't have enough evidence or information to know exactly what happened on the night Maggie's disappearance. Maggie Lee Burke went missing from Edmonton, Alberta on December 9, 2004. She was 21 years old, and what she was last seen wearing is currently unknown. At the time of her disappearance, she stood at 5'73" and weighed between 120 to 125 pounds. She has brown hair with natural red streaks and brown eyes. She wore glasses and has the following tattoos: a happy face on her left ankle and a marijuana leaf on her upper left arm. She is known to go by the aliases Lee and Angel. Police are still treating the case as a missing persons investigation, but have stated they believe foul play to be involved. If alive, she would be 37 years old. Those with information regarding the case are asked to contact the Edmonton Police Service complaint line at 780-423-4567 or Project Care at 1-877-412-5273. Tips can also be called into the Missing Women tip line at 1-877-687-3377 or Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477.
Number 4.
Mackenzie was last seen leaving her parents' residence in the 300 block of Trent Crescent in Saskatoon's College Park East neighborhood on the evening of December 21, 2020. Before entering a ride-hailing video, she'd told her family that she would see them around Christmas, which was only a few days away. According to her parents, she did not appear under duress. According to Paul, Mackenzie last accessed her cell phone on the afternoon of December 24, 2020. It has not been used since. It was on this day that her parents became alarmed, as the young woman hadn't shown up for Christmas celebrations and had not been in contact with them. Paul and Gina spoke with their two younger daughters, Sadie and Lauren, to ask if they'd heard from their sister, but they hadn't had any contact with her. The same was true when they asked Mackenzie's circle of friends. Paul looked around the area of North Adilwold Drive, where Mackenzie is reported to have been dropped off after leaving Trent Crescent. Unfortunately, he found nothing that would indicate his daughter's whereabouts. Mackenzie was officially reported missing to police on December 30, 2020. In February 2021, police released a photograph of an unidentified man they wished to speak with in connection to Mackenzie's disappearance, along with security footage of him that had been captured in late December while he was in the 1400 to 1600 block of North Idylwold Drive. While they believe he may have information related to the case, they have not disclosed much else. That same month, 34 digital billboards across Canada began showing information about the case, including Mackenzie's image and name. Each billboard prompts anyone with information to contact the Royal Canadian Mounted Police or Crime Stoppers. In May 2021, the Trottier family announced a $20,000 reward for information leading to Mackenzie's return. The money was raised through fundraising efforts put on by the family, their friends, Saskatoon's art community and agencies from across Canada. The arts community overall has been very active in the search, given Paul's connection to it. He is both a landscape artist and runs a small art supply store in the city. Both the family and police are concerned Mackenzie may be a vulnerable state, especially as she hasn't been active on social media. While she is known to leave home for periods at a time, she always maintained contact with her loved ones. While investigators with the Saskatoon Police Service's Major Crime Section are following up on leads, they've said there isn't much information coming in that would point them to Mackenzie's whereabouts. The family continues to work with the police, as well as Crime Stoppers and the RCMP, in the hopes she'll be located. The Trottier family has been incredibly active in their search for Mackenzie, setting up a Facebook group and website dedicated to the case. They have also started the I Am Missing social media campaign, aimed at helping to keep attention focused on those who are missing. Users can frame their profile pictures with the I Am Missing Canadian maple leaf with a puzzle piece omitted in order to show their support. Mackenzie Lee Trottier was last seen in the 300 block of Trent Crescent in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan on December 21, 2020. She was 22 years old, and while what she was last wearing has not been released, her family has shared she normally is dressed in a heavy green jacket and black yoga pants. She typically wears heavy makeup and is known to carry a large purse. At the time of her disappearance, she stood at 5'3" and weighed 145 pounds. She has medium-length blonde hair that's shaved on the right side of her head and green eyes. She has a tattoo on her right ankle and 2 piercings, one in the middle of her bottom lip and another on the left side of her nose. Her front teeth are also broken. Currently, the case is being treated as a missing persons investigation. If alive, she would still be 22 years old. Those with information regarding the case are asked to contact the Saskatoon Police Service at 306-975-8300. Those wishing to remain anonymous can submit tips via Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477.
Number 5.
On the evening of November 16, 1996, Sandra and John were scheduled to visit her parents' house for dinner in Bismarck, North Dakota. On their way there, Sandra made a call to the Bismarck Police Department to report what she believed to be satanic ritual abuse taking place at a farm near Center. When asked why she hadn't called local law enforcement, she replied that she didn't trust those with the Center Police Department and the Oliver County Sheriff's Office. According to the dispatcher, she'd sounded upset. Sandra and John arrived at her parents' house in the vicinity of the 1100 block of University Drive at around 7:30 p.m. While there, her mother, Bernice Grensteiner, felt she was displaying signs of mental distress. She had a history of mental health problems and thus asked her to seek help from the local hospital. Sandra agreed to this, but said she first needed to fill her car with gas. Sandra and Jacob were last seen leaving her parents' home at around 8 p.m. with a promise to return after filling up at the nearby gas station. When Sandra and John did not return to her parents' residence by 10 p.m., Bernice grew worried and reported them missing. The next day, police officers discovered Sandra's gray 1990 Honda Civic abandoned at the Centennial Beach parking lot in Bismarck. The location is adjacent to the Missouri River. The driver's side door was open, with the keys still in the ignition, and her purse was on the front seat. All that was missing was her driver's license. The beach around the car was searched and a shoe was found, which might have belonged to John. The Burleigh County Sheriff's Department Dive Rescue and Recovery Team attempted to search the river between Centennial Beach and the railroad bridge, but found it difficult due to the swift current and the amount of ice in the water. As such, they were unable to search as thoroughly as they wished. Due to the scene at Centennial Beach, it's been theorized that Sandra murdered her son, then died by suicide after jumping into the river. However, there's no hard evidence to support this. Through a receipt found in her vehicle, investigators have been able to confirm that Sandra did stop for gas at a local convenience store. There was an unconfirmed sighting of both Sandra and John in Warroad, Minnesota in June 2004. This helped to temporarily revive the search for the pair, as the case had since gone cold. The local police department used the newspaper and city television station to inform the Bismarck-Mandan area, while posters with age progression images of John were hung across Minnesota. The images were created by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. The involvement of the NCMEC in the case has led to tips being called into investigators, with the latest being from February 2016. Sandra's family has consulted with psychics in the hopes of learning something of her and John's whereabouts. The pair have since been declared legally deceased. Sandra's dentals and fingerprints are available for comparison, should her body be found. John's DNA has also been uploaded to a national database. Investigators have stated there's no evidence to support foul play in the case, and there has never been a suspect in the disappearances. The case remains open. Alan Jacobson, who has since relocated to Mandan, remarried a couple of years after Sandra and John disappeared. Sandra's mother raised Spencer after she went missing. In 2005, Spencer's biological father was run over by his own vehicle and left to die in the ditch of a maintenance road north of Tuttle, North Dakota. His murder remains unsolved. Spencer eventually married and had 3 daughters. Unfortunately, his wife passed away in 2009 from a rare form of strep. Sandra Sandy Mae Jacobson was last seen in Bismarck, Burleigh County, North Dakota on the evening of November 16, 1996. She was 36 years old and was last seen wearing a blue sweatshirt, a blue down-filled jacket, a pair of blue jeans, glasses, and a pair of brown lace-up boots. At the time of her disappearance, she stood between 5'53" and 5'63" and weighed 145 pounds. She had brown hair and green eyes. Her ears were pierced. John Henry Jacobson was also last seen in Bismarck, Burleigh County, North Dakota on the evening of November 16, 1996. He was 5 years old and was last seen wearing a green winter coat with blue cuffs. There are differing reports regarding his height and weight at the time of his disappearance, with some outlets reporting he was 303 and 47 pounds, and others saying he stood at 483 and weighed 75 pounds. He had light brown hair and brown eyes. Currently, both cases are classified as endangered missing. If alive, Sandra would be 61 years old and John would be 29 years old. Those with information regarding the disappearances are asked to contact the Bismarck Police Department at 701-223-1212.
Number 6.
On March 16, 1989 at about 2:55 p.m., 15-year-old Tonetta Carlisle seemed to vanish out of thin air while walking home from school on Ruth Avenue in Chattanooga, Tennessee. A prominent theory circling this case is that Jeffrey Jones, a convicted rapist, may have had something to do with Tonetta's disappearance. He took his own life just 2 days after Tonetta went missing. Physical description and unique traits: Tonetta Carlisle is petite with black hair and brown eyes. Her hair was curly with shorter top and sides and longer hair in the back at the time she disappeared. She is African American. She was approximately 5'13" and 95 pounds at the time of her disappearance. She was reportedly last seen wearing a denim skirt, white sneakers, and a pink and white striped shirt. Her eyes were almond-shaped, and she had pierced ears. Some of her teeth have caps and fillings. Tonetta lived at the 600 block of Hamilton Avenue and was very close to home when she went missing. The high school she attended was City High School, and she was a freshman at the time of her disappearance. There was a witness who came forth to state that she saw Tonetta getting abducted around 3 p.m. on Ruth Street near Hamilton Avenue. This woman observed Tonetta walking down the street and then saw several people jump out of a vehicle. This tan and yellow vehicle had a license plate number LKH 920. The witness saw Tonetta being forced into the vehicle and then watched as it drove away. She and her husband both tried to chase after the vehicle and quickly alerted law enforcement of the event. Then, Tonetta's mother filed a missing child report 8 hours later. Days went by before the correlation between the two events, Tonetta's disappearance and the abduction, was made. This license plate belonged to convicted rapist Jeffrey Jones. He had been incarcerated for 8 years before this event. He was released from jail about 1 year prior to Tonetta's disappearance. It is suspected that Jeffrey raped another woman from his apartment complex as well. Jeffrey Jones was located inside the van in which he committed suicide by carbon monoxide poisoning on March 18, 1989. There has been no concrete proof that Tonetta was killed, but it is definitely a large possibility. Her body was never found, or, if it was found, it has not been identified. Keep in mind that many unidentified bodies are yet to be identified, and there is a queue to identify them all. With the use of forensic genealogy, there is a possibility that Tonetta will be identified from a Jane Doe one day. There is still a chance that Tonetta is still alive, and she could have even been sex trafficked. In 2013, Tonetta's mother stated that she believed that Tonetta tried to fight off Jeffrey Jones and that he may have accidentally hurt her, which would have possibly led him to bury her and then him committing suicide. She firmly believes that someone in Chattanooga knows something about Tonetta. DNA. Tonetta's mother, Nani Sturtevant, has DNA in the CODIS system. Tonetta's brother, Daryl Stewart's DNA is also in CODIS. I am going to attempt to reach out to Tonetta's family to see if they are also on GEDMIC. If you have any information on this case, please contact the Chattanooga Police Department at 615-698-9752.
Number 7.
Connie Minchaca was born on October 5, 1960 to parents Karen Andrew and Wesley Ray Folk. While growing up, her parents separated and her mother married her stepfather, Rollo Minchaca. At the time of her disappearance, she and her family were having problems and, as a result, she was living with her father in Napa, California. The issues stemmed from her relationship with a 25-year-old man, which her family disapproved of. In order to meet with him, Connie would sometimes sneak out of her bedroom window at night. However, each time her room was found empty, her family would contact the authorities and have them pick her up en route to her boyfriend's home. Connie is said to have had affiliations with local gangs, but nothing more has been released in regard to this. According to her family, she'd run away from home at least 6 times in the months leading up to her disappearance. On the afternoon of June 9, 1978, Connie had a family friend drop her off at a Western clothing store where she was supposed to meet a friend. According to them, she'd been in a good mood when they parted ways. Later that night, she was planning on attending a local party with her friends. According to her friends, Connie never arrived at the party that night. She has never been seen or heard from again. It's noted she left all of her belongings behind. In the weeks following her disappearance, Connie's family received numerous anonymous and threatening calls. The callers, which would alternate between a male and a female, made various claims, sometimes saying Connie had been kidnapped and other times saying she'd been murdered. The callers were never identified, and the calls themselves caused Karen to have a nervous breakdown. Police questioned relatives, friends and those who knew Connie for years following her disappearance, but they were unable to uncover anything significant. Connie's family believes the case didn't receive any high-profile attention at the time. While the case is currently considered cold, investigators are still working it. They have interviewed dozens of possible suspects, and they have both her DNA and dentals on file, should a body be located. They do not believe they will find her alive. Theories. 1. A primary theory held by those who have looked into the case is that Connie ran away, likely due to the issues she was having with her family. Her parents don't believe this to be the case, especially since she left behind all her belongings on the night she disappeared. 2. A theory brought about by a Reddit user is that Connie may have been a victim of the East Area Rapist, also known as the Golden State Killer. They feel Connie physically fits the typical victim targeted by Joseph DeAngelo, and that the timeline of her disappearance fits with the timeline of his crimes. It should be noted that this theory has not been discussed elsewhere. Wesley Ray Falk passed away on April 16, 1993. Connie Gail Minchaca went missing from Napa County, California on June 9, 1978. She was 17 years old and was least seen wearing a pink blouse, a black leather jacket and blue Levi's jeans. At the time of her disappearance, she stood between 5'53" and 5'63" and weighed approximately 120 to 130 pounds. She has strawberry blonde hair and blue eyes. She is known to sometimes use the last name Falk Minchaca. Some law enforcement agencies spell her middle name Gail or her last name Minchaca. Currently, the case is classified as endangered missing. If alive, she would be 60 years old. Those with information regarding the case are asked to contact the Napa Police Department at either 707-253-4451 or 707-257-9223.
Number 8.
Darian Hudson had a dazzling smile that never failed to brighten someone's day. If you were having a bad day, Darian would change that, her mother, Stephanie Hudson, told us. She would just flash that smile of hers or say something funny. She had this big heart that shone through her smile. And well, she is, the light of our lives. But that light dimmed in October 2017 when Darian vanished from Stillwater, Oklahoma. She was 23 years old at the time. One day she's talking about moving back home, making plans for nursing school, and the next she's gone, Stephanie said tearfully. It just doesn't make any sense. Where is she? It's a question Darian's family and friends have been asking for years. Stephanie, along with some of Darian's close friends, have committed to posting photos or videos of Darian on social media every day in an effort to keep her story alive. Every single day, Stephanie said. I never miss a day. She's not going away, her story isn't going away. We're going to find her. In 2017, Darian was living in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and worked as a server at Chili's, a few hours away from her hometown of Hutchinson, Kansas. She had been in the state for several years and played softball while attending Langston University. She went through a rough time in the year leading up to her disappearance, as she suffered a miscarriage, a breakup with a boyfriend, and the death of her beloved dog, Zig. But always determined to bounce back, Darian enrolled in nursing classes and decided to move back home to save money. On October 21, 2017, she called her mother in Hutchinson to tell her the plan. She had gone through a rough time, Stephanie explained. But she was excited about nursing school and coming home to be with her family. We made plans to come get her that weekend. But a few days later, Stephanie got word that Darian was missing. My phone was blowing up with calls and texts from her friends, she said. No one could find her, and she hadn't shown up for work. Darian's family drove to Stillwater the next day and went straight to the Stillwater Police Department to file a missing persons report. Stephanie said they were told by police they had to wait 48 hours, so they started to canvass her neighborhood and talk to her friends. Stephanie told us the door to Darian's duplex was open, a light was on and dishes were in the sink. After 48 hours, the Stillwater police opened an investigation. Family members, friends, co-workers and neighbors were interviewed, but it wasn't until December that they got lead. According to Detective Mary Kellison, someone attempted to use Darian's debit card in early December 2017 at a hotel in Oklahoma City, which alerted police. The man told police that he took the card from a purse that he found sitting on top of a concrete sewage container at a construction site he was working at in Stillwater back in October. At the time, St. Francis Xavier Catholic Church was under construction at McElroy and Country Club Roads, just northwest of Stillwater. Police went to the site and spoke to multiple workers who remembered seeing a woman in the area on October 26, 2017. They said the woman, who matched Darian's description, was in a wooded area south of the site, Det. Kellison told us. One worker told police that the woman had a blank stare and did not engage with anyone. A man who lived on the property adjoining the church told police he saw Darian later that day talking with his grandchildren. According to Det. Kellison, The man stated his grandson got off the school bus and saw a female matching Darian's description come up out of the creek, through his electrified fence, onto his property, and walk up to his grandchildren. By the time the man got to his grandchildren, Darian was gone. He said that Darian was headed north to McElroy and then west toward Country Club. It is the last known sighting of Darian. Stillwater police brought in drones and cadaver dogs to search the area. Darian's sweatshirt and wallet were found, but there was no trace of Darian. In the years since, there have been no other sightings, no activity on her social media or bank accounts, and no substantial updates in her case. It's not like her at all, she was the social media queen, Stephanie said with a small laugh. And she always had her phone. Always. Doesn't make sense for her to be somewhere without it. Darian's mother and several of her friends continue to hope and pray that she'll be found safe, but are fearful that foul play was involved in her disappearance. Cameron Nicholson used to play softball with Darian at Langston University, and the two have been friends ever since. She is, my girl, Cameron told us. We went through everything together in college, the good and the bad. And even when things were bad, she always asked how I was doing. She was always worried about others. It was never about her. Darian and Cameron were part of a group of friends who all played softball and stayed close, even after going their separate ways. Cameron, who had moved to Texas, told us she saw a clear change in Darian's life when she was dating her ex-boyfriend. She stopped playing softball and began hanging out with new friends whom she had met at work. Things only got worse after Darian suffered a miscarriage, she added. But even with everything going on in her life, I know she wouldn't have left on her own without telling anyone, Cameron said. And not for 4 years. She would not want us worrying about her. I pray that she's still alive, but I feel like someone did this to her. Cameron isn't Darian's only friend who feels this way. Adesi Hill, who has been friends with Darian since 7th grade, told us the pair considered themselves sisters. We played volleyball and softball together. She was one hell of a shortstop, Adesi said with a laugh. And she was just such a fun, bubbly person. With a big heart. Adesi said as they grew older, they took different paths in life, but remained close. She spoke to Darian just a couple of weeks before she went missing. I just wish I would have taken the time to talk to her more, Adesi said. To really find out what was going on in her life. Adesi told us that she fears something terrible happened to her friend. Someone knows what happened and who did this to her, Adesi said. And that person needs to come forward. Because her mother, her siblings, her friends, we all need answers. Adesi added that she hopes police will take a closer look at the case and the people in Darian's life at the time. Police need to retrace their steps and start all over, she said. A lot of people are angry and sad. We've waited 4 years for answers, and that's 4 years too long. Detective Kellison told us that we acknowledge that foul play could play a part in Darian Hudson's disappearance. However, we have no evidence to suggest that foul play is any more of a factor than any of the other possibilities for her disappearance. Detective Kellison said that Darian's case is open and active, and anyone with information is encouraged to call Stillwater Police or the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation. She added that they remain committed to following up on any information that may surface. The detective has also collaborated with the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation's Cold Case Unit to feature Darian's case on a cold case playing card. The cards are distributed in area jails and prisons in the hope that an inmate with information will come forward. Darian remains the department's only outstanding missing persons case. Her friend from her days at Barton Community College, Jalen Monholon, told us that she'll continue to share Darian's story for as long as it takes. There are people in Oklahoma who haven't even heard of her story, Jalen said. I was shocked. So I keep sharing it. She doesn't deserve to be forgotten. Jalen remembers Darian as being a loyal friend with a big heart who had goals and dreams and worked hard for them. She didn't just disappear, Jalen added. There are so many unanswered questions and so many emotions, but we'll never give up looking for her. Every day that Darian is missing is another day of heartache for her mother, Stephanie. And it's another day that Stephanie posts a photo of her daughter with her bright smile, hoping someone will come forward with information. I believe she's still out there, and I will continue to believe that until I'm told otherwise, Stephanie said. But what I know for sure is that somebody knows something. For now, she continues to stay strong for Darian's younger brother and sister, who keep her going as their family prays for answers. We're coming up on 4 years now that she's been missing, but it feels like yesterday, Stephanie said. What if this was your daughter, or your sister or your friend? I pray every day that God softens their heart and they come forward. Darian would be 26 years old today. She's described as being 5'3" tall, 120 pounds with black hair and brown eyes. She has a tattoo of a feather and 5 birds with the words "birds of a feather flock together" on the back of her right shoulder. Anyone with information on Darian's whereabouts or who saw something around the time she disappeared is asked to contact Detective Mary Kellison at 405-742-8357 or the Osby at 800-522-8017.